What's your gain? Is your gain up at all, or is it all the way down, or
All the way down. So
are you sure it's not like all the way up and you have it upside down?
yeah, I got you, fam. How you like that?
Oh my god.
Yeah, I'll turn that back down. Okay. Yeah. So
Yeah, even my dogs were like, "What the fuck?"
yeah. So it's all the way down. It's just we do these recordings when Yui's teaching, and she has to like project while teaching because teacher. So
No,
she's
it's not Yui. It's just you sound incredibly loud.
Oh well, I did.
You'll hear what I mean tomorrow. If you
Oh,
listen to
God.
the episode.
Let
I
me
did
go to
what
my
I could.
settings. I'm just going to turn
Okay.
down my input volume. There's no sound dampening here, so it should sound like I'm in a gymnasium, and the walls are like cement. So it's just volume.
Maybe just don't talk
mixes.
like so close to your mic. I don't know what it is.
How's this?
No, you're too far away.
Yeah, so I moved it like less than an inch away from my mouth because the gain's really low.
Wait a second. You have a Yeti, don't you?
I do
What pattern is it on?
cardioid.
Try a different one.
How this?
Sounds incredible.
Oh, okay. I guess we're
Yeah,
doing
it was-
mono.
Sounds
Okay.
great.
Can't hear you anymore either.
Oh, you know what? I was playing around with this button by taking it off and putting it back on. I might be on cardioid now, even though the arrow is pointing at mono. I'll have to mess with that later.
Oh.
Professional podcasters.
You know, it's really ironic that that's the issue that we've had the last 2 weeks, and we're about to talk about technology today.
The hell's the technology?
Find out after the segue. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you're tuning in from across the country and around the world. This is the Life Midwest Podcast. Welcome to episode 75, everybody. I'm your host, Kevin Palmer.
How dare you? How dare you?
I did it on purpose.
We all know you did. Bastard.
Join a washed-up musician, a communications major, and an Army veteran originally from the Midwest as we talk about life and events that are both current and events. Here today to talk with you about that is your host, Kevin Palmer. Got our Thai correspondent, Wes Shirley, over there.
Hi.
And Seattle's best, but I don't mean the coffee, Lenny Wells.
Hey, guys.
What are you supposed to be this week?
I don't know. I just was having fun.
Oh, okay.
Well, that's not allowed. You better knock that shit off.
This week we're talking about at this point it happened a month ago, with it being October 8th. It happened exactly 31 days ago, but talking about the Apple event, and it kind of spawned a conversation around technology, I think, and just, you know, if for those who live under a rock or don't really know the three of us that well, I think we all know that I work for Apple, so I'm obviously an Apple person. Lenny and Wes, however, are more of the Android side. And it's actually funny because we used to have the entire three pillars covered. Wes was very much a Google person. Lenny, very much a Samsung person. Wes, is it fair to say that you're not really partitioned anymore towards Google?
I actively dislike Google these days. Their quality has significantly gone down, like iteration over iteration, and their customer service is abysmal. So Google can suck the fattest of cocks when it comes to hardware.
I know you're unhappy with your Pixel 6, or when you had the Pixel 6, you were very unhappy with it. Tell me a little bit more about the abysmal customer service, though.
So to some degree, it's understandable, right? Like my phone shit out. So I sold my Galaxy Fold for a reasonable phone, right? Like I don't need a $2,000 phone. I'm trying to go to Thailand at this point. So I sell that and buy like a $650, $800 at the time, whatever. I don't know. There was a deal or something. Pixel 6 Pro. It's supposed to be the greatest, best phone ever. And its benchmarks are still pretty impressive. Like today, it's still one of the top phones. But it was just an utter piece of shit. And I bought this like 20 days before I even went to Thailand. I get to Thailand and I have nothing but problems, connectivity issues. I had to reformat. I couldn't connect to Wi-Fi. I couldn't connect to my SIM card, not because I'm in Thailand, but because the phone itself is broken. I can shake it and it goes on the inside and I'm like, what the fuck? So I call them and I'm like, hey, my phone doesn't work. I'm in Thailand. There's got to be somewhere I can send this thing in either Japan or Thailand or China, somewhere here in Asia, which I know they have one in Japan. I Googled it before even calling them. And they're like, no, we can't help you. It's out of the 14-day trial period. I'm like, no, the phone is defective. The phone is fucking defective. I want to return this and I want a refund. And they're like, well, there's not really anything we can do for you. So then I went to Google Fi, which is my provider, and just seeing what I can learn there. And they basically told me to sit and spin. So I canceled my Google Fi service and went down to like, just keep my phone number. Like I want to keep my US phone number. So I kept that. So I paid $10 a month just to have it. But like I used to pay almost $100 a month. So it's insignificant to Google, but like that's how angry I was about it. And it's given me nothing but problems since then. Recently, it won't hold a charge for longer than like 2 hours. I have to keep it plugged in at all times. And the touchscreen is just terrible. The fingerprint sensor is unusable. It doesn't recognize it. I always have to just swipe up anyways and enter my passcode. It doesn't have Face ID or whatever it's called, where it like recognizes your face. And it got to the point where it was dropping connection and dying so quickly. At one point, I spiked it.
That's what I was waiting for. I was waiting for you to tell us what you did to it, because it's so funny.
This was a couple weeks ago, and I'm just like, Hulk rage on it. And it was a long time coming. Like I only had it since May. So what are we, 5 months out, 6 months? No, it's 10. So yeah, 5 months not even owning this phone. And I spiked it like a football, not because I was angry at any other reason, but because the phone is such a piece of shit.
Did you buy it brand new?
I did buy it brand new.
Oh, God, that sucks.
I think what's funny is I think back to my time when I first started with Apple, and I was working in the product area and sales, and I would have you have the people who come in and they literally troll Apple employees, and they're like, oh, what's your favorite Android phone? And I actually had an answer for them. I used to tell them, I'd be like, if you're going to get an Android phone, like get a Pixel, because you get the raw version of Android OS, and it doesn't have any proprietary crap, and it's just a solid version of the OS, and it's a good phone, and they make good hardware, and they have good cameras for the most part. And so it's funny to hear from someone who used to be such an avid Google person how frustrated they are with it. Moving right along into this week's topic of the Apple event and comparing it to what else is out there. First up is the Apple Watch Ultra. And one of the coolest features I think it has, aside from the usual suspects of a bigger, brighter, and better quality display, is the Compass Backtrack feature. That I thought was fucking cool, but I don't know how many people are going to use it in the 8. I think they're going to more so use it in the other new product announced, which was the Apple Watch Ultra.
Okay, I want to stop you. What is the Compass Backtrack? What is that?
So Compass Backtrack is so let's say that it's a very like outdoorsy extremist enthusiast kind of thing that I people like you and me aren't going to use it, but it's fucking cool. Basically, if you're hiking in the mountains or camping somewhere, it's something like that, and you get lost, it actually remembers the route that you took. So if you get lost in like a snowstorm or whatever act of God that you want to insert here, you can it actually maps a path backwards from where you've been hiking and traversing, which I just think is so cool.
What happens if you lose signal?
So that's where the SOS via satellite comes into play, which is really, really cool. Basically, there's going to be a satellite service with the next major update this fall. So in about less than a month or two here, to where you can actually ping satellites instead of cellular towers for not only help, but also for that said tracking. So.
Well, I guess my very first question is like, do you have to like pay extra to do the satellite pinging?
No.
Oh, okay.
Nope.
So it's not like a like subscription thing or anything like that. It just does it.
You would think it would be, but no, it's like because like OnStar and things like that obviously like want a subscription and want a fee for like every month for that kind of thing. But no, it works. It's kind of just like messages, right? Like it's just this free service that like having an Apple product like buys you into like this service essentially. So, but I think that's a really cool thing that's really going to be used on the next new product I want to talk about, which is the Apple Watch Ultra. I think honestly, this was probably the most revolutionary product that was unveiled this past September. Besides it just being bigger and brighter and badder, you have this customizable action button, which is I think great for accessibility, not just outdoor extremists, but accessibility. I think of people like my mom who have macular degeneration and may benefit from not only a larger, brighter, higher quality display, but being able to use that button for other features, shortcuts, things like that. 100-meter deep water resistance, dual speaker and 3-way array microphone, 86 decibel siren. I mean, these are really extreme use cases, obviously, but I just think for the outdoor enthusiast, for the diver, for the hiker, for the mountain climber, it's just a really fucking cool device. 36-hour battery life, 60 hours in low power mode. It starts at the same price as the previous generation titanium model watches did. Has a dive computer with the supported app. I mean, you're not diving deeper than 130 feet, but that's what it supports up to. So just a really, really cool device. I don't personally find myself wanting it, but I get the market that it's out there for. I think a lot of people go out there, and I want to talk about this for a minute. I think a lot of people go out there and they're like, well, they have like a Garmin or something like that. Something that's really, I'm trying to think of the right word here, but it's really bound to them in what they do in their lifestyle. And they're like, oh, the watch is cool, but my Garmin comes in a lot more handy for what I do or the way I live life. I mean, I think now Apple's kind of broken into this market that other smartwatches haven't with this Ultra watch to kind of compete with Garmin and other people and other companies in that space. What do you guys think?
So I guess I don't know about Garmin. I was under the impression that anyone using a Garmin like a decade ago just uses their smartphone at this point.
I mean, they probably do, but I specifically am thinking of my future brother-in-law who used to, it just has everything Apple, right? Just really, really big investor in the Apple ecosystem, but had the watch and ended up getting rid of it in favor of this Garmin that gave him those push notifications from his phone that he cared about, but also did things before the Apple Watch came out with them. Like I think of like the altimeter and a high quality compass and very accurate tracking when it came to fitness metrics and stair climbing, and had the dual frequency GPS years ago that only the Watch Ultra just came out with. I just think of people like that and I'm like, wow, now they can now they finally have an answer where it's like maybe they do get rid of the Garmin and come back to the watch. I don't know.
All right.
So here's my thought on like that specifically. When it comes to like outdoor stuff like that, I think there's always going to be a better specialized option. And I could be talking out of my ass because like that's not an activity that I partake in. For like the more like recreational hiker like that kind of like exists out here where I live, this will probably be like something that people will certainly gravitate to. But for those like the ultra like hardcore stuff, I don't think that this is like the product for them. Like for example, like the 100-meter water resistance, who is that for?
Scuba divers, but even then,
recreational diving.
Yeah, but they're using diver watches. Those things are going to be like pressure sealed. They're going to be all mechanical innards, things like that aren't going to like that will accomplish the same thing but better. And this isn't to like shit on the Apple Watch, or anything like that, but I just, it feels like some of these like exist for the sake of having them. If you kind of get where I'm coming from, because
Mhm.
like, yeah, like the 100 watt meter resistance is great as all, like in case like it falls off your wrist when you're, you know, however, like, you know, half mile off the shore. But at that point, how are you going to get it back? You know, like the dive thing, like, okay, that again, like people that scuba dive like recreationally might benefit that for in some capacity, but people that are diving enough don't need that. And anybody that's new to diving is going to be with somebody who's been diving long enough to not need that function either, you know? So like learners or people that are just beginning. Same thing with like depth gauge and like water temperature sensor, like in like an emergency survival situation for like temperature, sure. But like, again, at that point, you either are in a I'm fucked situation or you're not, because you don't you're not going to fall through the ice, right, and be like, well, how cold's the water? That's all these things that are coming to mind for me. Again, this is like specifically for like the Ultra Watch.
I could see the watch being of use. So like when Kevin, when you originally mentioned the Garmin, I thought you were talking like a car GPS. It didn't click that you were mentioning a watch, and that makes total sense. But like there is not a small number of people who like pay for expeditions to like tops of mountains, like Mount Everest, for example. So I could definitely see the market like, okay, I'm going to pay all this money to go to the top of Everest. And it's still a dangerous trek, even when you pay someone. You might just buy the watch for the SOS feature or for like the avalanche feature, so they can like track you, or like you don't have a phone that you can't see because of whiteout conditions. You just have a watch that's going to carry you along. I can see like really corner cases for it to be usable and beneficial to certain people. But also like if I was, so like I enjoy nature quite a bit. I think my phone's just the better option because I have a camera and I have the internet and a big screen. So I see what I assume to be a venomous snake or just some snake I can't identify. I snap a picture of it, use like an AI that tells me what it thinks it is, or I post it on like Reddit, what is a snake? And I have an answer within probably no more than 10 minutes telling me what type of snake, what type of plant I'm encountering, what type of tree I'm encountering, if the path looks safe, or I have GPS, I have all the features on my phone.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a really good point. I love your use of the phrase corner cases, because I think that's actually how that is really how I feel about the Apple Watch Ultra. It's very much like these are not everyday use cases, or these features are not everyday use cases that make it amazing, other than maybe the battery life. You know, this is really just one of those like, hey, if you're potentially fucked or you're in a situation where you could get fucked, this would be really cool to have.
I think that there certainly is like a market where this like works, and like some, if not more than half of the features make sense, right? Like for like the hobbyist outdoorsman, like I said, again, in like the Seattle Pacific Northwest area, or even, you know, on the other side of the mountains, there's certainly people that can and would benefit from some of these features, or like, you know, game hunters. But then I'm still having trouble reconciling the fact that, you know, they're potentially without power for days at a time. So I don't know. It's not for me. Like, even if I was in the Apple ecosystem, like it's not something I would be looking at. But again, like I think it's more of like a niche product.
Yeah, I agree. And that's why I find myself very happy with the Series 7. So the Apple Watch Ultra was not the only new product announced last September. It was also announced after they showed off the Series 8. Not really a big contrast or difference over the Series 7. You pick up a temperature sensor for improved sleep tracking and ovulation tracking, which Ashley finds fucking creepy, and I don't blame her. I think it's a cool thing if you want to use it, but I also understand, like, even if it's Apple, and Apple is very, very much on like privacy as a fundamental human right? Not to say that they're like the king of it compared to other companies, but I'm just saying they always stress about it. That doesn't always make everyone feel comfortable with a certain feature. So yeah, I think it's definitely important, especially like it's a big piece of women's health. And I think it's very easy in 2022 to say to sit back and say like all companies sell health information, which a lot of them do. And so I think that's why it kind of makes Ashley uncomfortable. Like, even though it's Apple, and Apple is definitely going to be like one of the last companies to do that type of thing if they ever do. But I can understand how it weirds some people out, but I also definitely see the benefit of it. I actually learned something from that. I did not know that your body temperature slightly rises when you ovulate. I did not know that.
Yeah, it does.
So it uses that temperature sensor to kind of detect like, hey, you may have, based on your recent entries in your quote unquote journal, you may have ovulated within the last 48 hours essentially, which I just think is cool.
Well, Kevin, I'll tell you what, she might find it creepy now, but when you guys eventually potentially decide to have kids, she's going to want to know when that's going on, and so will you.
yeah, for sure. Moving on, the Series 8 also picks up the crash detection and SOS feature via satellite, and the compass backtrack feature, just like the Watch Ultra does. Again, I want to emphasize, I don't think it's a big jump. If you have a 7, maybe even a 6, I don't think it's a big jump. I think it's a very quality of life type of update. It doesn't make me feel like I need to go and get it right now. And I think a lot of watches are like that. I think of the Galaxy, and Wes, you talked about it earlier in the pre-show. Like, you have a Galaxy Watch 4, and there's a 5, and you don't feel like it's a big hop, skip, and jump away from what you currently have, right?
Right. And I might be mistaken. It might be a 3 versus the 4. I have not the newest generation, but the one before it. And yeah, no, like, it's almost negligible what the upgrade is. Like, they have different sizes, which is cool. I wish I would have got the bigger one because it's a little small, and I have fat wrist. So like I would have liked to have like a substantial watch face, not only for like style purposes, but also to see. But yeah, I couldn't see myself, even if I was loaded, like money wasn't a thing. I couldn't justify buying an almost lateral replacement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I do wish I could get an Apple Watch, because like it functionally, like it wouldn't like really like, obviously it wouldn't gel very well. But I think like what Apple's done with the Apple Watch is pretty top tier, honestly. The Android watches that like I've seen, like I just, not to like call them imitations, but the Apple like legitimately like nailed it the first time, and in successive iterations. Because like the Samsung watches, it's never been like something where like I've thought like I want to get this, but the Apple Watch is like,
yeah, I definitely see where you're coming from, Lenny, because I think about how a lot of Android users walked into the Apple store for a pair of AirPods. Like, I know that's not the exact same thing of what you're talking about, but like the fact that it's like there's like some sort of cross connection to where you can kind of like jump and get the best of both ecosystems, essentially. Like, yeah, you don't get all the cool features of like the music pausing when you take one earpiece out, or like if I'm listening to a phone call on my phone and I hang up and then I sit down in front of my iMac and I start watching a video on my iMac, it automatically switches over because everything's on my same Apple ID. Yeah, you're not going to have all those same like, cool things, but you still have the basic functionality. And I think Apple is missing a piece of market share with that, potentially, by not having just some sort of like, being able to pair up an Apple Watch with an Android device. Even if you only get limited functionality with it, I think some people would still do it.
I think like part of the draw for the Apple Watch is like that interconnectivity with like at the very least the phone, right? And it speaks to like how well, because like fitness trackers had been around for a little bit, like Fitbits and stuff, prior to like the Apple Watch coming out, and there had been some innovation as to like push notifications, but the way that it essentially operates as like a second phone, for lack of a better term, but also supplements it, they just really nailed it. And as much as like there like the memes exist of like Apple copying like an Android feature, I'm waiting for at the minimum like Samsung to like make a product that a watch product that basically just rips off the Apple Watch that makes me want that the same.
And I think we're kind of at that age, right? We're at that point where companies are taking other companies' features and just kind of polishing them and making them their own. I definitely feel that happening and see that happening, whether that's, Apple to Android or Android to Apple or Samsung to Google or, like crash detection. That's a really cool feature that Google came out with first. But Apple takes it and it's like, okay, we have crash detection and SOS via our own satellite service. Like companies are just taking one and they're just kind of like one-upping each other with like the same features, which is kind of cool to see. And I think it's just the consumer wins on that. So
I wanted to go back to the Apple Watch real quick. I didn't get a chance to make a comment on it. The Samsung Watch is comparable these days to like what the first or second generation Apple Watch was, maybe the third generation. I haven't messed with any of the newer ones except for their aesthetics. Like you go into an Apple store and you play with the little ticky thing. If you could make an Apple Watch work with a Samsung phone, just like you can make a Samsung Watch work with a Google phone, obviously you don't get the Samsung Health features on the Google phone, but it works with Android OS and it works pretty much seamlessly. You can change the watch face, you get push notifications, basically all the minimal functions that you would want outside of like the main selling point of it pairing with a Samsung device. If you could do that with an Apple Watch on a Samsung phone or a Google phone, if Google ever gets better, I would totally switch to an Apple Watch because it's a beautiful device and it feels better. It feels quality, it feels heavier, it feels nicer, it looks more durable. I could probably yeet that thing across the room and it would break whatever it hit.
The Watch Ultra, at least.
I don't even know what I was playing with. It might have just been like the 7th generation because it was in the Apple store at the mall. But it felt like a tank and it felt good. I'm like, I don't want to switch to Apple, but this watch is really nice.
Lastly, as far as what was announced, the iPhone 14 and 14 Pro, I'm not going to talk a lot about the 14 itself. It's not a big difference over the 13. Just go buy a 13. They still sell a 13. Still has the same processor as last year. A little bit better low light photography. Has the crash detection and SOS via satellite, Bluetooth 5.3. That's literally it. I mean, there's really not much to talk about there. 14 Pro, meaningful upgrade over the 13 Pro, 48 megapixel main camera, A16 processor. This thing is fucking fast. Phone literally cold boots in under 10 seconds. I haven't timed it, but it's less than 10 seconds. It's insane. A little bit longer battery life over the 14, an hour more than the 13 Pro on average. Better, brighter display with ProMotion and the always-on display, which I'm going to come back to. Second-gen optical image stabilization, so videos look really great with cinematic mode, and then ProRes 4K shooting as well if you have a 256 or higher model. Were you guys impressed with Apple's iteration of the always-on display and finally coming to the table with an always-on display? What do you guys think?
I have my always-on display disabled because it drains battery life, so I couldn't care less.
That's fair. Lenny?
I'm in the same boat. I actually hate the always on display. I wish it never existed. I've turned it off. For Samsung, it became like a standard thing on the Galaxy 8. I think I got like the Galaxy 8 Plus or whatever that year. Before I disabled it, like I always thought like I had forgotten to like lock my phone.
Okay.
And then, kind of like Wes said, it drains battery, and which I mean can still be an issue for modern phones, but certainly was even I just didn't like it aesthetically, and for just general use, just could not get behind it.
So I've quantified within the last 2 weeks how much battery, as far as like in the form of hours, always on display drains. So I have a new Samsung A53. After spiking my Pixel 6 Pro like a football, I actually took a downgrade as far as specs go, but it's just an overall better phone. And it's technically lower specs than the S22, but it has a much bigger battery. So we're looking at 500 or 5,000 milliamp hours. And I only charge it up to 85% because that's like for battery health and it's a feature you can turn on. And if I do light using of the phone. Like I'm not gaming, I'm not like browsing Reddit all day, I'm not taking a bunch of pictures or recording video. I get about 2 days of charge time out of it, 2.5 roughly. That's with always on display off. With it on, I get about a day and a half of light use. So we're looking at like a full 24-hour difference from having always on display off.
Mm.
And that's their fifth iteration of it. So like it's it's pretty much where it's going to be, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's cool. I think, having now that I've had the 14 Pro for a little over a week now, I don't enjoy it as much as I thought I was going to. I remember when they first announced it, I was like, cool, like, Apple's finally like going to bring their own iteration of this. And I think maybe I kind of understand why there wasn't like a big rush to it, because it's not that it's a gimmick, but I sit here and I'm like, I have an Apple Watch. Like all my notifications are going to come to my watch. Like, why do I need a display to always be on? And so I think it's one of those things where it's like the question was answered before, and I just kind of ignored the answer as to why there was no always on display. Because now I just look over it like I fucking forgot to lock my phone. I mean, I can turn off the always on display, but then people don't know that I have a 14 Pro. No, I'm kidding. But I mean, no, I get it. Like, I get why some people want it. And I now that I've lived with it for a little over a week, I can understand why you two are both saying like, don't really care about it.
Always on display is somewhat cool, especially if it's integrated, right? So like if you can have Shazam telling you what song's playing without having to pick up your phone, which is what the Google Pixel did. You also get to see the time, the date, the temperature outside, weather conditions. It's cool for at a glance. I will give it that. It's definitely a utility that is nice, but it's the trade-off between battery performance or battery time, and that is, I think getting more battery is going to win every time. I just have to touch my phone and then I have all that anyways.
Guys, I gotta stop. I gotta go to work. I'm on call this weekend, so some stuff came up, so I gotta dip. But feel free to continue on or.
Okay. Love you, buddy.
For sure. Best of luck.
One other thing I wanted to touch on with the 14 Pro is the new dynamic island. That I can see if you're going to call it a gimmick, I can see why. It's definitely nothing you should buy the iPhone 14 Pro because of, but it's just a nice touch. It's Apple being Apple, I think, with like, yes, like we haven't found a way to like perfect or like perfectly have like no punch hole or pill shaped like notch in the screen. So we're gonna do something cool with it and pretend like it's on purpose. I think that's really cool. I think it's really cool to be on a phone call with Ashley, and then my HomePod that is playing 3 feet away from me, I can see that album cover art and tap on that and control that music right from that dynamic island, right from that notch on the front of the screen. I think that's really cool. I know that the Galaxy Fold, starting with the 2 or 3, maybe even the first one, I know it's able to like pixelate and fill in those pixels. But you sacrifice on camera quality. It's only like a 4 megapixel camera. So, I mean, there's that trade-off of like, the notch is not completely gone away. The hole punch in the Android phones, the dynamic island, it hasn't, magically gone away. It's here for a while, I think, but companies are getting creative with how they're handling it. And I think dynamic island is going to be copied. I really do.
So Dynamic Island sounds like a reality show, not gonna lie. Also, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Look up a video of it real fast. Like just like type in iPhone 14 Dynamic Island.
Okay, from Apple, Dynamic Island. Okay. Oh, okay. So basically where the front camera is, there's like an interactive mini screen on top of the screen. So how that works?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think I like the phrase dynamic island, because usually a feature, usually you want the feature or the name of the feature to tell you something about what it does. I get why they call it a dynamic island, but it's not a house. It's not a kitchen. So could we have come up with a better name? Probably.
Look up the Samsung A53. If you've not seen the front face of this thing before, The camera is so non-noticeable, but it's there, of course. Like when it's reading your face, there's a black thing that goes around it. And other than that, when the screen's off, like there's no notch. It's just like it's flat. They don't cover it with anything black like the most phones do. It's just there, and it's kind of simple.
Yeah, I do see that.
I'm surprised Apple didn't go that route because their whole thing is sleek and simple. This kind of looks like overdone and gaudy.
I think they couldn't make the hole punch as small as they wanted it to. And I think I really think they're looking to make a big leap when they want to make that big jump to either a very, very small speck in the screen or just not completely non-existent. And so it's like, well, we can't do what we want to do without making a $2,000 display and making the phone $3,000. So how can we make it like a fun feature instead, where it's new, it's still a refresh? Because like last year, the notch just got smaller, and everybody like was like, "Oh, the notch got smaller. That's so cool." And it's like, so now it's like, well, they can't really make the notch any smaller, because if you hold this up, like if I hold this phone up to Ashley's 13 Pro Max, like the cutout or the punch out is not that much smaller than the notch in Ashley's phone. It's not. They cut out the top and made it a really nice, aesthetically pleasing shape.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that kind of brings me into the last leg of this conversation, which is, and I think you'll agree with me on this, Wes, is I think technology is it's not that it's hitting a wall, but I think we're getting to this point where like new phones come out every year, but it's like cars. Like I've got a 22 Camry and the 23 Camrys are rolling out, and I'm not sitting here wanting to trade it in and get a 23. I think these things are turning into cars where it's like, hey, if you're in the market for one, here's a refreshed with some quality of life updates, and you have the usual suspects: updated Bluetooth spec, updated Wi-Fi spec, processor, battery, camera. There isn't really like a new like it feature. Like I don't know. I think about the iPhone 4S had Siri, right? Like that was fucking huge. The 5S had Touch ID. That was fucking huge. Then you had the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus. It was a bigger iPhone. Then you had the iPhone 10. It was fucking Face ID. You just don't have those features rolling out year after year anymore. And I don't care who you are. That's the same way it is with all companies right now.
Yeah, other than like the folding phone gimmick or like what was it, LG that had the scrolling phone? I'm upset that didn't make it to market. That was such a cool idea. But like other than gimmicky features, so yeah, like a car you'll have for a decade unless you're like really into having new stuff. A computer you'll have for a half a decade. So a phone we're already having for half a decade. People who don't want to spend money on phone, not tech enthusiasts. And it's good quality. Other than battery degradation, because lithium-ion batteries are quite notorious for dying within a few years, or at least having significantly lower capacity in a few years. If they could fix the battery issue, I think we could have phones for a decade, honestly.
Yeah, and you would just have the hardcore users who are upgrading every 1 to 3 years.
That's not profitable, though. They would have to make the phones like $3,000 machines for it to even work for them, right?
I don't know. I think there's a sweet spot. I think there's a sweet spot, and there's a lesson to be learned from the car industry because in the 60s and 70s, those fucking cars lasted forever. And then they realized, oh, this isn't as profitable if we, introduce services and have people have to get their cars serviced every, so often and put, invest new parts in it. But then they realize, well, not all companies are doing that. And so they're just going to leave our business for other businesses. And so I think there's enough of that's happened in the human race in the last like few decades that I don't think it's going to happen with smartphones, but I do see your point.
I like healthy competition in any market. Obviously we win in that. So like if Apple starts cannibalizing Samsung ideals and Samsung starts cannibalizing Apple and Google ideals, we're just going to end up with better stuff in the future. And like, I think we're in a kind of a golden age for phones. They've met their, I don't want to say pinnacle because like we don't know what the future brings. There could be an insane breakthrough tomorrow and everything we said today was wrong. But
100%.
like as of how I feel right now, I think we're pretty much at, like you said, the sweet spot. Like these phones are going to be so like, and it didn't pan out, but Samsung said they weren't going to make phones in 2023. Well, they decided to anyways, but like they were just going to skip a year. Like we don't need to keep making phones. And then they diversified even more and came out with like a whole bunch of different types of like different levels of phones. So like there's definitely a market everywhere. And I think you can, I'm backtracking because I said, oh, well, that's not profitable. You can just make different iterations, just like car manufacturers make different things like ski mobiles and motorcycles and aircrafts and whatnot. Hell, Lamborghini makes like trains or tractors or some shit. Like, so with Apple's ecosystem, you don't have to have a phone every year if you don't want to, but you probably would because like here's a new iteration of this for the lower grade, here's a new iteration for the higher grade, and people will just buy what they want when they want it.
Yeah, totally agree. I gotta say, Wes, I'm pretty smitten between the three of us. We didn't really bash heads the for most of the episode here. I think we are on a very common ground here.
There's no point in being a hater, right? Like I don't want to be in the Apple ecosystem. Like I told you before I bought this phone, I'm looking at buying a new phone. I'm considering an Apple or an iPhone. But then after thinking about it, I'm like, oh, it's a huge leap. Like I have everything on Android and I'm so used to my habits and my own ecosystem, which is like semi-Android. Like I try not to get involved in like the Internet of Things with Android specifically. But like, if it was open source, if it was as easy as just picking up the phone and using it with whatever type of features you want, that would be one thing. Like if I could use my Google accounts across it seamlessly, because even though I hate Google software, their systems, as far as the internet goes, like they are the internet in my eyes. And they make Android, so whatever. Android's here or there. I don't really care about the operating system. I care about how easy it is for me to log into my stuff, how easy it is for me to be familiar with what I'm playing with, really.
Yeah. No, it totally makes sense because you don't have the option to choose your default apps in iOS. So it's like you can download the entire Google suite of apps for iOS, but it's like those aren't your default apps, and that's just kind of fucking annoying. So I totally get it. I really do. Hey, before we close out the show, I want to remind you all, if you're looking for ways to support us, we do have a PayPal that's live at paypal.me/thelifemidwest. We also have social media available, including TikTok now, all major social media platforms at The Life Midwest. You can also email us at support@thelifemidwest.com. We also have a website, right, Wes? We have a website at thelifemidwest.com.
We do. We normally talk about that after the break. We didn't have a break.
We didn't have a break because it was just such a riveting conversation today. So no new emails to read. Fuck the breaks. No new emails to read this week, but we'll always read one if we get one on the air. Chime in on what you heard today or any topic for that matter as we continue to keep on keeping on with the current events scheme and just talking about, recent events and the way the world's turning and all that fun stuff. And we really appreciate hearing from you if you have anything to say. You can also leave us a review on your favorite listening app as well. We greatly appreciate that. Whether that's a rating or a full out review where you want to write us a Harry Potter novel about how much you love or hate us. Wes, it's been real. It's been fun. It's been real fun. Always love these types of conversations because I think we're really, really good at nerding out. Who do you want to shout out this week?
I'm going to give a shout out to Samsung this week. I know this is like an Apple episode, but this phone that I have, the A53, is reminiscent of my Google Pixel 2, my Google Pixel 4, when Google was a good phone. It's cheap, it's really high quality, and it's comparable to their flagship phone. So if you have a new phone to recommend to trolling Android users who come into the Apple shop, recommend the A series, probably the 50. It's the middle of the road that has almost the same specs as the 7 series. Of any generation, I'm sure it's the same. Right now, the A53 is really making me not want to chuck phones at the ground anymore. Give a shout out to my wife Yui. She's actually teaching in the other room. I'm not sure if she's coming through at all, but I'm probably coming through on hers because I'm loud as fuck. Shout out to mothers, because every week we need to shout out mothers. Mothers are cool.
Well said, my friend. I want to shout out Lenny. Appreciate you making it on for most of the episode. I know recording when we've been recording has been tough on you. We'll figure it out. The three amigos will always figure it out. So I hope you're having fun working or listening to this while working or whatever it is you're doing while you listen back to these episodes. We appreciate you. I want to shout out my amazing fiance, Ashley. I'm going to shout out Brittany for Lenny for putting the kids to bed and just keeping the house together while Lenny records with us. Really appreciate you. I know you're probably mad at Lenny, so don't be too hard on him because we need him. Want to shout out Apple, want to shout out Google, want to shout out Samsung. I'm going to shout out all three. Like Wes said earlier, competition equals a win for all of us, and I think we'll continue to see that as life goes on here. So folks, we're going to leave it at that. We'll be back next week. Don't forget to call your mom. Shout out to moms. Shout out to dinosaurs.
Oh, fuck yes.
And,
yes.
Yeah. Shout out to that kazoo and the balloon that Wes had last week too. That was great.
I should have brought it.
Did you leave it in your backpack? Where is it?
It's in my backpack just far enough that I would have to get up and remove my headset and pull the chair out and make obscene noises to get it.
Remember, kids, don't get up and take your headset off and make obscene noises to make obscene noises on your podcast.
Hold on. You know what? They need this. There we are. I didn't get the kazoo, but I wanted you to hear how ridiculous it is for me to get out of this position.
Thank you for demonstrating. Folks, don't forget to tune in next Saturday and every Saturday here on the Life Midwest podcast. Take care. Have a good one. That was good. You sound like a motherfucking bird.
Bird.
Peace out, guys. Why did I say peace out?
I don't know, because you're lame as fuck. Deuces.
Later, guys.